You know, most podcasts talk about customer experience like it lives on a slide. This one talks about what actually happens when the meeting ends. Welcome to Confessions of a CX Executive. I'm JP Dumas, former CX executive, and this is a show where we have honest conversations with leaders who've been in the chair, made the calls, and have owned the good, the bad, and the ugly that don't show up in conference keynotes. If you're responsible for results, revenue, churn, and team engagement, well, you're in the right place. Let's get into it. Welcome to this week's edition of Confessions of a CX Executive. I'm your host, JP Dumas, and I have another distinguished guest. This is Magnus Cole. He's an operations and customer experience powerhouse, and I'm sure he doesn't mind me saying that. He's got an interesting background spanning logistics, large-scale operations, and public sector transformation. But a fun fact about him is he's originally from Pittsburgh, and he's a diehard Steelers fan. Now, I'm not going to hold that against him because, as you know, I'm a Raiders fan. So we're able to get past our differences here. Enough about me. Now, Magnus, he's currently with the Port of Seattle, where he brings a system-level perspective to organizations on how to deliver service and drive performance at scale. This is largely impacted by his storied career with such companies such as FedEx, Alaska Airlines, and JetBlue. So, Magnus, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thanks, JP. As you talked about it, spent a lot of time in the customer service industry, customer experience, and in airlines, knowing that the margins are so thin, you have to do a lot with a little to make the customer experience top notch. And I've been very fortunate to work with some amazing companies like FedEx, JetBlue, Alaska Airlines, even Marriott Hotels. It was just an opportunity to learn. No matter where you're at in any of those companies, if you're eager to learn, you're going to be able to take a look with you to the next opportunity. You integrate and how you work with customers, whether internal or external.
Absolutely. And as I mentioned in your background, I mean, you're known for taking that frontline reality and kind of bridging it with executive strategy. And it really helps people understand, like, what is the best way to produce outcomes. So I think we're going to have an interesting discussion today. So I'm going to come in hot.
Okay.
From your perspective, where are leaders most out of sync with what's actually happening on the front lines?
Yeah, that is a hot question. It's a great question. What I would say is that I think leaders are forgetting how they used to be customers, and I'll put it in this perspective. When you're a customer, and not necessarily for your own product, but when you start looking at other products, and you start asking questions of an agent or a salesperson, whatever it might be. When you ask questions, you're going to learn about the product, right? You know everything you need to know about your product, but you need to be able to answer those questions of the customers that are coming in. And your agents who are your front line need to be able to answer those questions as well. A lot of leaders are losing that perspective because you have things like Amazon, you have specialty services that you may get your shirts from or whatever it might be, and they're not taking the time out to be a true customer. Go into a Walmart or Target or something and ask questions about different products, even competitor products for that matter.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that the term for it, I think we're all familiar with eating your own dog food.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Yeah. So in your leadership experience, can you think about a moment when you realize that this ain't a people problem, this is a system problem?
Yeah, a lot of airlines, we like to call it legacy policy, right? And you end up doing things that you've done for a long time. I think a lot of businesses believe that if it's still working, why try to fix it? But everything changes around you, and things move quite fast nowadays than they did 20, 30, 40 years ago. And because they're moving so fast, you can't just stay stagnant to where you're at or accept the fact that things good because the way they've always been. So when you look at just problems, one of the issues I'll talk about is in an airline, we see customers do their own self bag drop, tag their own bags and get it to the ticket counter. In certain airlines, they want things a certain way. If you have a first class line, you want that to be the first thing that people see. So first class gets highlighted, they get attention and so on. But if you have a bag drop and it moves quite quickly, you really want people to see that because it saves you money and you want to get people through the line quickly. So I was at an airline and there was a conflict over whether or not bag drop could be at a certain place at the ticket counter versus the first class. And you realize that, it was creating frustration not only with the customers, but for the employees because they couldn't service either of the two the way it was designed. And it came from a corporate office that said, hey, this is the way we set up all of our airports. And the reality is that you got to make the adjustment to a specific airport the way customers like to see it. And so if you're empowering your people the right way, they'll tell you when there's an opportunity for an adjustment to be made or how it should work. And then it's giving them the opportunity to take that risk. You can see a couple things about giving people the opportunity to fail on a small scale. In corporate environments, people talk about taking risk and failing, and they're so adverse to that risk because they don't want to see the large scale failure. But letting people fail on a small scale allows them to build confidence and allows you to build trust and confidence in a relationship with them and grow by allowing them to see how their failures could lead to more successes down the road.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great leadership perspective. I mean, a couple of things that you talked about there are, first question is, whose process is this designed to enhance? Ours as a company or the customers? And then I think the second piece is that when you talk about empowering individuals and you give them agency to say, hey, here's some things we think might enhance the customer experience and selfishly make my job a little bit easier, you're going to get people who are going to give you more opportunities to innovate versus, I'm not telling Magnus because I told him 3 other times and nothing happened. Great point there. So let's shift gears here and think about how you build your team. And we're in the age of AI. We have all these tools out there. When you look at hiring today, though, are we selecting for the right things? Or are we just better at filtering people out?
I think we're using the tool not to our advantage today, right? You can use tools that can filter out applications and resume. The reality is that when you look for somebody, we do a great job of filling the existing role, and that's unfortunate. And I'll say it this way, because I think you need to hire people to fill your role. So when you hire somebody, you should be looking at them in the sense that, are they going to be capable of doing my job when I move to the next level? And that's how you build a team, is to say, okay, if I have everyone eager to take my job from me, it's going to allow me to develop people and have a succession plan so that when I move into a new role, I can either have a team come with me, or I know what I left is going to remain successful because I taught them the right way. And it's, when you look for somebody and you're talking in the interview process, obviously we have to do certain things in an interview process. You can't ask certain questions, but the reality is that what you're looking for is somebody who is seeking to find things.
No.
They want to find something. And if you find somebody who wants to find something, whether it is working correctly, not working correctly, trash on the floor, they're looking for that next thing to find. When you find that person, you found a good one, because they're going to be eager to find opportunities within your organization.
That's fascinating, because you think about how a lot of these algorithms and processes are set up, really geared towards checking all the boxes. And what you're saying is, leave some slack in there because you want the individual to grow into eventually where they need to go. And so I think that's an interesting way of looking at it, because one, you drive engagement, you drive growth, and you're probably driving employee retention by providing those sort of opportunities for individuals to do different things, which ultimately leads to better business outcomes. So yeah, I love that. So let's talk a little bit about, let's go back to our point about systems. Where do you see systems creating friction that leadership thinks they've already solved for? And I think it touches on your second point around, hey, we've always done it this way.
Yeah. I think most organizations now have a business engineering or an engineering group that not necessarily does facility structure like a civil engineer, but it is more of like a system engineer, and they're designed to take passenger flow or customer engagement pieces and put some numbers together to say this is what you're supposed to be able to do. If you look at the UPS, FedEx, Amazon, everyone has a targeted number of like packages per hour to be delivered, or where that customer interaction might be. Give the frontline agent an opportunity to engage with that customer, to develop a relationship with the customer. And it's the number of games. But everybody has that. And I think where we're getting into some challenges is that we're using that too much to say we can get one more package in, or we can get one more passenger through, or one more customer into our store based on our numbers. And what you're not seeing is the repeat customer, because they don't have the rapport and the engagement with the frontline agent. And those systems that we're building to say this is what it's supposed to look like interfere with the individual's opportunity to create a repeat customer. And the majority of your funds come from repeat business, and they should, right? And if the majority of your funds or the majority of your marketing is from repeat business, it allows your business to grow. But we're losing that in a sense that we've engineered it to the point where you don't have enough opportunity to build that rapport with the customer for them to sell your product to the next person and the next person and the next person. And it makes it more challenging for you to sell a product or you to provide a service when someone says, well, I don't know you. Right? And that used to be the theme, I buy insurance from the guy down the street that I know. Absolutely. I buy from the pharmacy, from the pharmacist that I know, or I buy my groceries from the grocery store, or the butcher from the person I know. It is so important to get engagement, and it's such a measured tool right now is engagement, but we've engineered it to the point where we're not allowing the front line to engage, and it's creating that friction where our agents want to engage. They want to talk to people, and the people want to talk to people. But giving them that opportunity is narrowing now as we look at some of these systems that have come out and said, okay, we can engineer it this way, or even AI. And people talk about AI and how AI is going to move into our everyday reality. Well, it's already here. But what we're failing to think about when AI, and I had this conversation yesterday with my chief operating officer and chief information officer, where AI is a predictive tool. And if you train on AI truly is and how it works or how it'll support you, you'll realize that judgment still has to come from a human. That judgment is critical. Engagement, whether it's with customers or your employees, but that engagement is critical on how you say yes or no to something an AI tool or an engineered system can't do. And that judgment is important for you to build that rapport, get customers on board, and make your product seem like it's from the person or your neighbor next door that's making sure you're taken care of.
Wow. Yeah. So glad you touched on that, because I mean, these are the sort of things we would see in contact centers, right? There'd be such a focus on average handle time, but not on first call resolution. So you get a very quick interaction, but then the customer calls back because either A, the issue wasn't resolved, or B, we didn't build the correct rapport or establish the right relationships, and we simply had more transactions or interactions. And I think as you talk about AI, where we have the ability to scale those sort of situations, you're going to very efficiently scale that sort of chaos and transactional behavior, but not necessarily scale effective interactions, which drive the customer retention flywheel and the revenue that's associated with it. So definitely, I think there's some things that we need to focus on. Okay, so now I'm going to get you in trouble here. When have you had to yeah, exactly. So tell me about a time when you had to override the system to make a great decision.
Yeah, I think that happens a lot in the airline world. You have a lot at your fingertips in the leadership role in the airline world that you can work with customers very easily. And I'll take you back to 2007, February 14th, 2007. And I remember this as if it was yesterday. It was the great freeze in New York. JetBlue planes got stuck on the taxiway. I was out in Long Beach, California, and customers were upset because their flights couldn't leave to New York. We were operating 9 flights a day, and we had so many customers in the terminal. And I remember standing there, shoulder to shoulder with all of my agents, and customers were highly upset. Someone said to me, "What are you going to do for me?" And I think it was, I think it was the right decision at the right time. And I said to the person, I said, "Look, this is what I can do. I will give you every tool I possibly can to help fix it. But I can't put you on a private plane, can't put you on any plane now in New York. Right? I can tell you what I can't do from that perspective. But I am happy and willing to put after like an 18-hour day, just trying to keep people satisfied to leave the airport." And I think just being flat out honest and saying, "Hey, this is what we're doing." It was not the message that the airline at the time was saying, "Hey, don't send people away. We don't know when the airport's going to open up. We don't want to cancel flights." I think it was important to just make the decision. This has to be done, right? I don't want you sitting in my airport waiting for some decision that may never come. I just want you to leave satisfied to know that I did everything I possibly could for you. And that filtered into everybody that was at the ticket counter at the time. And all of my agents started doing the same thing. And you notice that as the leader went, so did everybody else. So if it's okay for you to do it, I'm going to do it too. And it was at the time, I think JetBlue wasn't thrilled with how I handled that, but I realized it was the right thing to do for the customer at the right time, and it was the right thing for my agents to do. Did I get in trouble for it? Not necessarily, because the flight still wouldn't have left anyways. It was the deep freeze in the Northeast. The reality was people need an answer, and that was the answer I gave them. And when you're in a customer service environment, it's critical to give somebody a solution, even if it's not the solution that they're looking for.
It's that transparency. I mean, just the airline example that you provided. I mean, listen, man, the crew's not here. There's no plane here. We're not leaving today. And I'm fine if you tell me that. It is when I don't know what happens next, and it's ambiguous, and we use weird, squishy language. Like, just, hey, we're all adults here. Just tell us what it is, and then we can make our decisions from that. And I think customers will give you grace from that perspective and just saying, tell me where we are so that we can both move forward. So great story there.
Yeah, there's quite a bit in the airline industry, and transparency is key, and that not only with the customers that are in front of you, but I think it's key for your employees. The airline business is a unique business. The margins, the profit margins are extremely thin. You talk about fuel prices right now, and if you think about it, a flight from LA to New York today, we will use more fuel in one flight at one trip than you will use in your vehicle today in the next 10 years.
Wow.
Think about that. It's one flight. It's still the most efficient way to get people 150 or 200 people from Los Angeles to New York, but it is a lot of fuel. And the margins are extremely thin. So every customer counts in the airline world. And how you take care of customers, how you finish is critically important. You can hear stories about baggage not making it, challenges with how you finish is so important in the airline world. Because if you can finish strong with a customer and you can give them some resolve, they're going to come back and they're going to say it not only thank you, but I appreciate the work that you've done, because you have others who won't do the same. You have others who'll be like, well, your bag is lost. Call me in an hour, or call me tomorrow, and I'll tell you if it's here or not. Right? That's not customer service.
That's right. That's right. We've all had that experience. So I want to go back to your hiring process and some things you think about as a leader. What do you see that makes a great operator, but doesn't necessarily show up on paper?
Yeah. What makes a great operator, in my opinion, is somebody who is in the moment. They're able to think about the situation and make decisions that are going to benefit not only themselves, but their surroundings. Oftentimes you don't get that in an interview process, and it's very challenging to try and pinpoint that in an interview process. But decisions have to be translated into what others are going to respect, what others are going to be able to emulate, what others are going to be able to learn from. And oftentimes great operators aren't able to share that verbally, but they're able to show you. And I think when you work with somebody or you look at somebody's ability to do something in the interview process, is a little bit more challenging. When you look at somebody's history and what they did with the tools that they're given, operators usually come to the forefront with making the most of a situation and helping others in the same process. You'll see the difference when someone comes in and talks about how well they did, but they didn't talk about how well the others have done or how well the company has done. They'll tell you how well they've done. Great operators tell you how well they have done, as well as bringing everyone else along to do well as also.
A lot of language around we versus I, and I would even take it a step further. Just in that interaction, I want to have some inkling about your emotional intelligence at that point. Like, if you can make me feel comfortable, I have a pretty good idea you're probably making customers and your team feel comfortable at the same time.
Have you ever seen you talk about emotional intelligence? Have you ever seen like the video where you have the monkey bounce on a basketball and people are in the scene and they're looking for certain things in the picture and they don't see the monkey bouncing the basketball through the scene, right? You want somebody who is really looking for the entire picture of that scene. Let me ask questions about what it is I'm consuming so that I can learn the same questions that my customers are going to be asking about my product, about my service. And it's critical that the emotional piece and the emotional connection to it, leaders have that to say, hey, I was at a store and I've seen this product and I've seen the competitor's product and I've seen all these other things. And what separates us from someone else is this. And there has to be something there that gives you the advantage over another competitor or someone else. And a lot of that is an emotional tie. You're selling to someone's emotions. You're providing a service to someone's emotions.
Absolutely. So what advice, as we wrap up, what advice would you give a leader who's listening to this podcast and they feel that their results are off? Like, where should they look first?
I think it's important for leaders to look at their products, their services, what they're doing, and their engagement with customers in their frontline. And you say, well, that's them looking at themselves, and that's kind of like a cliche. But the reality is that, you know, Undercover Boss is like a huge show because leaders aren't out there. Think about that. If you meet the requirements of Undercover Boss, then you've already failed because you're not visible to your people and you're not engaged with what's going on the front line. And so that first step is, how do I engage the front line? How do I engage the customer? And how do I get to know? If you're flying on airplanes or you have a passenger service plane, you should be on that plane. You should be talking to customers who are on that plane. If you are selling candy bars in a grocery store, you should be in the grocery store. You should understand what the challenges are with that store and how those candy bars are being sold. It's that engagement, perspective, not only the customer, the frontline agents, and say, okay, these are the hurdles that I do not want my people to have. How do I fix that so that it's smooth sailing for everyone? They have easy access. Things are running the way I expect them to, based on what I see. And then it's the conversations with people to say, hey, what are you seeing and how can I learn from what you're seeing? So as a leader, it's a lot of listening and a lot of asking questions than it is directing and saying, go do this, go do this. It's more gathering that information and feedback so that you can make the right decision versus a decision.
Yeah, we get so far removed from that customer, and we're just making decisions based on, I think, I guess, I feel. Listen, any final words, Magnus? I'll yield the floor to you.
Well, JP, first off, I appreciate the conversation. Customer experience is so critical in this day and age. People are relying too much on other things, whether it be AI or some chatbot thing. But the reality is, the more we engage each other, the better off as customer service experience. It's not an easy job. It really isn't. And everybody who is in the customer service or customer experience arena, because when you truly provide great customer experiences, customers remember you. They remember who you are. They will always want to come back to you, and you can place that in any service environment, product environment ever. If you are good to take care of your customers will come back over and over and over again.
Absolutely. Well done. And I think you landed the plane. See what I did there? Anyway, this has been this week's edition of Confessions of a CX Executive, and we'll see you next time. If today's conversation hit close to home, I want you to do two things. One, share this episode with someone who owns a number. And two, subscribe, because we're just getting started. I help CX leaders move from stalled execution to visible results before delays turn into credibility and retention problems for your organization. So if you're feeling the friction between strategy and execution, connect with me on LinkedIn or check the show notes and let's have a conversation. Until next time, this is Confessions of a CX Executive. Real talk, real operators, real outcomes.